Guard is right for you.
As far as the memo goes, the memo came over. We've got our folks our national security lawyers in the White House that work for me, work for the president. They're slicing and dicing it, looking at it so that we know what it means and what it understands.
Did you see it?
I did.
What do you think?
It'll be released here pretty quick, I think, and the whole world can see it.
Do you think things change the next day after? You think?
Again, I'll let all the experts decide that when it's released. But this president, again, it's so unique, Brian, that he wants everything out so the American people can make up their own minds. And if there's people to be held accountable, then so be it.
Welcome back to Morning Joe.
Unbelievable.
It's Thursday.
I mean, he wants everything out. Well, why was that his attitude when he was a general in a hot zone? Did he want everything out then? Was that his attitude last year when Hillary Clinton was running for president, or 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And Republicans and journalists were actually going crazy over the fact that she may have mishandled classified information improperly and set up a server and let everything out? There's nothing. Yes, this president is unique, Mika, and his chief of staff now is unique. And wanting to let out information that the director of the FBI that they appointed not so long ago and the deputy attorney general, a Republican, both of them Republicans, have said, don't let this out. It is bad for America's national security. It is misleading, and it could do damage to the intel communities. General Kelly knows better. Donald Trump doesn't care, but General Kelly knows better, and yet he dared say that this president is unique. He wants to let everything out. Let everything out? Really, General? When you have the director of the FBI saying it would be bad for America, let everything out? When you have the Republican deputy attorney general saying it would be bad for America if you, quote, let everything out? You are correct, General. You are correct. This is unique. Uniquely irresponsible, uniquely reckless, uniquely partisan, and far, far beneath you. Unbelievable, Mika.
With us, we have Republican strategist and political commentator Susan Del Percio, and joining the conversation, the host of MSNBC's Politics Nation and president of the National Action Network, Reverend Al Sharpton. Also with us, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, Jeffrey Goldberg is with us, and New York Times Washington bureau chief Elizabeth Bumiller. Good to have you all on board. Great panel.
Hey,
Joe.
Mika, I want to go to Jeffrey really quickly and just ask him. We've been saying for some time, Jeffrey, that we may be in the middle of a slow-rolling Saturday night massacre that ends up with the firing of Bob Mueller. How significant is it that you now have General Kelly and Speaker of the House Paul Ryan playing along with Devin Nunes and Donald Trump, who both have proven themselves to be extraordinarily reckless and irresponsible with the truth?
Right. Well, you have a situation in which Nunes is not actually the important player here. Without the cover of Ryan and Kelly, he doesn't get to do anything. And, I mean, it's very important to keep in mind that, Paul Ryan could end this tomorrow by saying, no, Mueller is sacrosanct. We don't even have to legislate his position. We could just say, absolutely, he's going to do what he does. But Ryan and Kelly and all the rest are going on with the strategy, which is a clever strategy. It might be an immoral strategy, but it's a clever strategy of investigating the investigator. When you don't like where an investigation is going, you start to investigate the investigator, and they are party to this, and that's why we're in a, I don't know if it's a uniquely dangerous moment, but it feels like the beginning of a uniquely dangerous moment.
Well, Elizabeth, I'll ask you whether you believe this is a uniquely dangerous moment when you have a general who is the president's chief of staff, and you have Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, moving forward and releasing information, releasing a doctored memo, a memo that everybody that has looked at it says, that's not a partisan Republican, says misrepresents the truth. And they're releasing it despite the fact They got personal pleas from the FBI director and the deputy attorney general, both Republicans, not to release this information. Where does that put us as a republic?
Well, it puts us in a very unusual position that the President of the United States is at war with his law enforcement apparatus. He's at war with the FBI and his own Justice Department in an attempt to protect himself from the Mueller investigation. That is what all of these stories are about, day after day after day. That's very confusing, I think, if you're watching this sometimes out in the rest of the country. But what is going on here is the President of the United States, aided by the Republican leadership, trying to undermine an investigation that is right now a threat to his presidency. And yes, it's an extraordinary situation where you have him fighting his own FBI director.
All right, let's bring in now a member of the House Intel Committee, Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. Congressman, good to see you. The FBI, in its statement yesterday, said, quote, "We have grave concerns about material omissions of fact that fundamentally impact the memo's accuracy." That's not from you, Democrats on the Intel Committee. That's from the FBI. What specific concerns do you have about this memo becoming public?
Well, the main concern I have is that most of the allegations in the memo are simply not true. You know, we heard not just from the FBI, but from the Department of Justice that the release of this memo would be extremely reckless. And then, of course, the FBI reviewed it on Sunday night and issued the statement that they did. And then, as you probably saw late last night, Adam Schiff and his staff discovered that Devin Nunes and his staff had actually altered the memo before they sent it to the White House, which is a very clear violation of House rules because, of course, we voted on one set of allegations. Democrats voted against releasing it, and then they altered the language to send it to the White House. So what is happening here is not in any way, shape, or form unclear. You have a political attempt drawing on falsehoods, and the victim in this case will be the American people's, or at least a portion of the American people's, confidence in the Federal Bureau of Investigation and in the Department of Justice. And that's a terrible, terrible cost to pay for a ugly political maneuver designed to protect the president from Bob Mueller's investigation.
Congressman Nunes and his team say the changes that were made to the memo before it went to the White House were questions of grammar and punctuation and things like that. What do you understand to be something different in that memo than what you voted on?
Well, two things I would say about that. One, that's not what Adam Schiff, who reviewed both of them, said. He said they were material and substantive. Number two, this is not an area in which there's a lot of play. When you're declassifying something, and a committee votes to release a certain set of language, you don't then change that. You can imagine what sort of doors that would open if after you took a vote on something, well, we're going to change the language in this bill. That's not the way you do business in the Congress. And it's indicative of the process, or I should say lack of process, that has accompanied this this whole sordid effort on the part of Devin Nunes and his staff.
So, Congressman, take us inside the deliberations. Take us inside your committee meetings when you said the allegations that Nunes is putting forward is false. That would be nothing new because, of course, he lied about the masking scandal that he and Trump concocted. You have the FBI director saying that the memo is false and misleading. He's a Republican. You have a deputy attorney general, also Republican, who says the allegations are false and misleading. What do Republican members of your committee say in justifying the release of a memo, the contents of which they haven't even read? They don't even know the underlying information that staff members used to make that memo, and won't even say whether or not this whole thing was coordinated with the White House. What do they say?
Right. Well, it's a great question. I'll tell you exactly what they say, Joe. I asked Devin Nunes that question. I said, look, these allegations are clearly made up, but at a minimum, before we go public with them, and we voted on this, we made, Adam Schiff made a motion, let's allow the FBI and the Department of Justice, who are the two accused entities here, to come in and talk to us about these allegations, which are pretty clearly on the face of them false, but to at least talk about them. Joe, you were a member of Congress. You did oversight. You knew that if you had a problem with the Department of Defense or the Department of Agriculture, you didn't start firing off press releases and declassifying information. You invited those entities in front of your committee, and you had a conversation, and you tried to get at the truth. They voted unanimously to forbid the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation to come in and to talk to our committee. Why? And this answers your question. Because Devin Nunes said that they are under investigation, which was palpably not true. An investigation is something that is set up deliberately, officially. That was never done. And so what you've got here is just a mad dash to throw mud on a storied institution comprised of people who work pretty hard and put their lives at risk for us every day, all in the service of defending Donald Trump.
And Susan, I was on the Armed Services Committee, and we handled many times classified information. We always worked with Democrats, even as we were going through political turmoil, even as we were going through impeachment proceedings. If it had to do with national security, there was never a time that a conservative Republican and a liberal Democrat wouldn't get together and figure out how to do this in a way that the entire committee could move forward together. This is so unprecedented. This could only happen in the age of Trump.
Well, and that also brings up a really interesting point. Yesterday we know that Devin Nunes basically deflected when he was asked, did you work with the White House on this? We know he's not working with the other side of the aisle, but was he working with the White House? And Congressman, part of my question on not only why would he deflect that is, what do we know about the staffers who wrote this memo? Apparently they're the only ones who really read the underlying documents there. And are they political appointees? Are they people who've worked for the House committee for a long time? I just question their motives as putting this memo together that everyone's riding on.
Yeah, I don't sort of want to get into criticizing members of the staff, but I will note that they are, along with Trey Gowdy and Adam Schiff, the only people, and that means no other members of the committee, no other staff, had an opportunity to look at the underlying classified information here in order to form a judgment about whether the allegations in their memo are true. So the other staggering thing here was that as we voted to release this damaging false memo, members had no way of knowing really whether the work that the staff had done was reflective of what was implied in the underlying intelligence.
All right, member of the House Intel Committee, Jim Himes, thank you very much. Now to two other reports from yesterday that really frame all we're seeing involving the president's attacks against the Mueller probe. The first is a report that President Trump allegedly asked Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein about his loyalty during a recent meeting. According to CNN, Rosenstein visited the White House in December to ask for the president's help in fighting off document demands from House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes, and that during the visit, the president questioned Rosenstein about which direction Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation was heading. Trump then allegedly asked the deputy AG if he was on my team, according to sources familiar with the meeting. The sources say that Rosenstein replied, of course, we're all on your team, Mr. President. Rosenstein is the highest Justice Department official in charge of the Russia investigation since Attorney General Jeff Sessions recused himself. The second report concerns the FBI agent that President Trump and Republicans in Congress accuse of being biased toward the president. According to CNN, that agent, Peter Strzok, was involved in the drafting the letter that would later be sent by then FBI Director James Comey to members of Congress just days before the election. That letter stated that the agency had new information about Hillary Clinton's emails and was reopening an investigation it had closed in July of 2016 after finding no criminal wrongdoing. Strzok reportedly supported reopening the Clinton investigation once the new information was discovered. Joe.
Yeah, so Reverend, now you have, first of all, we have two very rich items here. One, another loyalty oath from a president that is broken down every constitutional norm. You don't do that as president of the United States, especially when the investigation is centered on you. If I had called the FBI while they were investigating me about something and asked a similar question, I would be kicked out of Congress. No, you just don't do it. Secondly, and this is really, I think, in a way, the most darkly humorous thing that came out yesterday. Another one of Devin Nunes's Harry Potter conspiracy theories went up in thin air. You remember their Harry Potter Secret Society magic ring theory that they were trotting around? That ended up being actually a joke about a Vladimir Putin calendar. Now they've been holding on to this Strzok conspiracy theory that he wanted, it was a deep state attack. It ends up that the agent that they're attacking for being violently anti-Trump was the very one that was supporting Comey and drafting the release of the letter that helped elect, wait for it, Donald Trump.
No, it is amazing, Joe, that, first of all, when you look at the fact that it's usually those of us on the left, particularly some of us in civil rights, that have questioned federal investigations, and now you have people that are way on the other side that used to call us names for doing that, that are not only questioning it, but are actually plotting to undermine it with things that doesn't even make sense. I mean, you've got to sit in my seat and watch this and say, I can't believe these guys who not only question the FBI, but undermine an investigation, and the one orchestrating it is the one they're investigating, the President of the United States. But when you go into bizarre territory is when you start going after agents that in fact were the ones that supported things that led to your election. You can only say that can only be motivated by a paranoia that you must be guilty of something, or people near you guilty of something that you care about, that would drive you into where you don't even care who you shoot at. You shoot first and you ask questions later and say, oh, I might have shot the wrong guy, but you're just shooting because you're really running from somebody getting to you or somebody close to you. It's really, really tragic.
So, Jeffrey, here's how it appears to be working for Republicans. You're Devin Nunes.
That was just the shell game.
Yes, that was right a bit of a, that's kind of where I was headed. But so they write this memo, right? They cook up a memo and they say this implicates the FBI.
Right.
The FBI comes out yesterday and says you can't release that memo because we believe it's damaging and it has omissions and it won't be factually accurate. So now today, Devin Nunes and Republicans could say, see, they don't want the memo out because they've got something to hide.
Right.
And this just goes in a circle. They swim in a circle. And by the way, they say, we heard this last week, the reason you won't be able to trust Bob Mueller's investigation, he used to run this FBI that we say is corrupt.
Bob Mueller, staunch Republican, by the way, but put that aside for a second. No, it's, you know, it's, is there a song called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes? I think there's a song like that. Yeah, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. This is, I mean, there's so much smoke right now in our eyes. It's worth cutting through to first principles. One of the first principles, listening to Elizabeth, listening to this conversation, the underlying supposition here that the president has made, rather uniquely in the history of the presidency, is that the FBI and the Justice Department work for him in the modern history of the presidency. That's, let's come back to that at bottom. There's this assumption that they work for him. And so if Rod Rosenstein actually said, you know, yeah, of course I'm on your team, that's probably actually inappropriate. I'm not saying he did say it. It's probably inappropriate in the sense that what you're supposed to say in that moment is, I work for the American people, I work to defend the Constitution, just as you do, Mr. President. That's where this conversation has to go, but it's not because Donald Trump came into office believing that these guys work for him.
Elizabeth, of the facts that are reportable out there, is it possible to look at this as we are already in a constitutional crisis?
I don't think we're there yet, but I do think that, you know, I'd agree with Jeffrey. Look, the president is obsessed with loyalty, and we saw that, and he sees the Justice Department as his guys, and has a profound misunderstanding of the government. And I think that we saw that when he asked Comey for his loyalty. He wanted his Roy Cohn in the Justice Department, and again, this is a president who's acting out of great fear about Mueller, and there is a concern among a lot of Republicans that that Mueller will be vulnerable, perhaps towards the spring. And again, you see these efforts in Congress that so far have gone nowhere to try and keep the president from firing Mueller. We'll see how that plays out. But I don't think we're in a constitutional crisis yet. But I think we're it's looking a little scary for the future.
You know, Jeffrey, if we can drop back and look at this maybe from 30,000 feet and just look back over the past 18 months. And you're an agent of the FBI or you're running the FBI. And this is what the political landscape has looked like. You had Democrats savaging the FBI, saying that they were on a partisan witch hunt against Hillary Clinton. Then James Comey didn't indict her. And then Republicans said that the FBI was biased and, of course, talked about Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton's meeting. And so then it was the Republicans attacking. Then James Comey released a letter, and then those same Republicans were saying what a great man James Comey was and how the FBI was doing the right thing, and thank God for the FBI. And then the second they started investigating Donald Trump's, the crimes committed by members of Donald Trump's inner circle, for which 4 have actually been arrested and charged, then suddenly Republicans started attacking the FBI. So 18 months. 4 different attacks from 2 political parties based on who they're investigating. Where do you go if you're an FBI agent? What do you do? This is unprecedented in itself as well, isn't it?
Right. Well, I mean, the FBI has been